Hi everyone, I'm going to show you how to use the industrial sewing machine. I'm going to show you how to put your bobbin in, how to thread it, how to do the basic seams with your industrial sewing machine. And you will be able to get a close-up of how I make my seams. So first I'm going to show you how to do the basic seam line. After that we will move towards gathering, and we are also going to learn how to make a French seam. I'm going to show you two different types for hemming. We are also going to do a top stitching. So we are going to do all the basic seams what we can do with the industrial sewing machine. And these are going to be the seams that we are going to use in the following lessons. If you would like to learn any different types of seams, please let me know and I will make sure that I'm going to make a video of those too. But now let's get to know the industrial sewing machine. So this is my good old sewing machine. I've been using this for 12 years now. I use this machine for all of my projects. And first I'm going to show you how to thread the bobbin. So put the thread on the holder, drive it through the hole and drive it down to this bobbin spinning wheel. I'm sorry, I don't know its name, but just follow my lead and do it exactly like I did here. Also spin the thread onto the bobbin, secure it tightly, and then put it onto the bobbin holder where you're going to spin the thread onto it. Push it back until you hear a click, and then you can start pedaling and get the thread onto your bobbin until it stops spinning. And now we're going to thread the machine itself. Let's place the thread to the thread holder, drive it through the hole that's above it. There you can see it. Put it through that hole, drive it down to the machine. Here, place it into the first hole from behind and then move it around and again do it from the behind towards the front. So you're going to have a twist around this little tool, and then we are going to move the threads towards the front. Here again, start putting the thread into the hole from behind, move it forward through that snail, move it inside those little plates. And then there's another hole there, so just drive it through the hole. And again, you can see those plates there, and you can place your thread between them. Above it, there's a hook to put the thread inside. Let me show you this from close up. So you can see, hook it up there. And then, so you have it between the two plates. You hooked it inside there and there. And we move up. There's a hole underneath this element here, and you need to move your thread through that hole. So always look for these holes to get your thread through and run it down, hook it inside into every hooks you can find. And then there's another hole just above your needle. So basically drive through the thread through all the holes you can find on your machine and just follow my pattern. Finally, put the thread inside the needle. We do this from left to right and then put it behind the feet. Now let's put the bobbin inside. So this is the bobbin holder, what we have for this kind of machines. It's a bit tricky to place it inside, but have a look on how I do this. So basically, I put the bobbin inside the bobbin holder. The thread is going from the top side of it towards the right. So now please pay attention to how I do it, because it's actually really difficult to explain it. It's easier if I show it to you. So basically you put the bobbin inside. You need to hook the thread into a small opening and push it backwards. And for the industrial sewing machine, we have the bobbin holder underneath the feet. You need to push it until you hear a click. Once it's done, we do the setup on the sewing machine. This one is the stitch distance. With 1, you're going to get more frequent stitches. 2 is quite frequent as well, but I usually go with 2.5. That's the best for most of my projects. And from 3 upwards, you can actually start gathering, because the stitches are gonna be wide enough to do a proper nice gathering. So I only use it for gatherings, or maybe for jeans as well. So basically this is where you adjust the stitch density. Now let's do the 2.5, because I do think that's the best for most projects. We are going to start with a simple seam, so let's just get our fabric ready. I am using a Duchess satin, but you can use any other sturdy fabrics as well. Move the thread to the side while with your hand you lift the needle up and down, and by doing this you will get your bottom thread to the surface from the bobbin underneath. There you go. Your machine might show seam allowances which you can follow while sewing. These are usually can be found next to the feet. As you can see, mine doesn't have any. But if you have them sewing alongside these measurements, it's going to make it easier for you to make a straight line, as we are going to do it now. I always use the width of my feet for the measurements. So every time when you start a seam, we have this handle here, and we need to push it down to actually make a reverse seam. The reverse seam secures your whole seam at the beginning and close it at the end. So start your seam with the reverse stitching, and then you can start sewing. While sewing, try not to focus on the needle, but focus on the edges of the fabric or the seam line or the markings next to your feet. Secure it at the end with the reverse stitching. And we have the first seam line. Ta-da! Don't worry if yours is not so straight and you're struggling with the first line. It takes practice, and we are going to practice it a lot. You might have issues with the seam line not being neat and maybe one side of the seam is loose. In this case, you need to change the strength of the threads by adjusting it here and also here. You need to experiment with it and find your perfect setup, which might differ from fabric to fabric. Also make sure you do have the threads between the plates and are driven through all the holes and hooks. If everything looks fine, you should have a nice, neat, straight seam line like this one, on both sides equally nice. Then you have the perfect setup on your machine. And now we are going to practice making this kind of straight line more. I would like you to make more straight lines following the first line that you just done. So try to make them equal distance from your first line. And just do as many stitching lines as you think you need to feel confident. Don't worry if it's not completely straight at the beginning and you're having troubles making a straight line. You just really need to keep practicing. And just keep doing all these lines. I know this is boring, but this is how you're going to get used to your sewing machine. And this is how you're going to be more confident. So practice, practice, practice until you get bored of these lines. And pay attention to the edge of the fabric and also to your previous line. And try to sew following those lines, not the needle. If you only watch your needle, that is likely you won't have a nice neat seam allowance and it won't be able to keep a straight line. So after we've practiced enough, we are going to see how these seams look with different kind of stitch densities. So this was 2.5, and now I'm going to show you my most dense stitching option. Basically, feel free to try all of these setups and see it for yourself, see which one works better with your project. The dense ones, I usually only use it for patchwork because it seals the edges more than the 2.5 distance stitching. But other than that, I don't actually use it because it's too dense for me. Just have a look. I hope you can see how dense this seam is, much denser than the previous one. I really don't advise this to be used on soft fabrics. Just to compare the two lines, I'm going to show you the normal stitch density next to this one. So I'm just gonna go back to 2.5 and just make another seam next to it. You can do this as well, so you can see the difference between the stitches. Make sure you close and secure the edges. And here we have the 1.2 and the 2.5 seams. This is how they look next to each other. Hopefully you can see the difference between them. Now I'm going to show you the 3-point stitch density. Or maybe, yeah, let's do the 3. And with 3, you're already able to gather the fabric, although not as nicely as with the 4-point, but just have a look. Also, when you're sewing, you can make sure that you're actually holding on to the fabric, not letting it to be gathered, because actually this 3-point can gather your fabric now. So just stretch it out, but only slightly. And now have a look. So this is the 3 different kind of seam stitch distances, sorry, next to each other. You can see it very nicely that they are actually quite different. And now we are going to do the one which I use for gathering. So we are going to set it up to 4, which is the maximum. This is the widest stitch on my machine. Right now I'm not going to gather it, we just need to try it. So you just try it and see how it looks, because you need to know what kind of stitches your machine does. And you need to know the differences between them, and now you can see. So all of these stitch types have a different function and we use them for different kind of fabrics. But as I said, 2.5 is perfect with most of the fabrics. But now we are going to do a gathering. So we use the exact same setup. Make sure that you reverse stitch it at the beginning. It's really important. Otherwise, when you gather, you might going to end up removing the whole thread. And then you need to start again. Here, once we are at the end, don't do the reverse stitching. Just remove it. Leave it open at the end. To gather it, just get the bottom thread, which came from the bobbin. Separate it. And this is going to be the thread, the bottom one is going to be the thread that you're going to pull. And when you pull it, ta-da! A nice gathering. So this is how we gather. You can gather it as densely as you wish. It's really nice. You can adjust it. You can even undo the whole gathering. So you're basically moving it alongside the base thread, the bottom thread. This is very easy and simple to do it, and if you don't like your seam, just remove it. You see, it's really easy to get rid of the gathering. And now let's sew 2 layers together. When we just simply sew together 2 layers, usually the right side facing the right side, so we are going to see the wrong side of the fabric, and this is where we are going to sew alongside. And since I don't have the measurements for seam allowances on my machine, I use my measuring tape. So easily with my measuring tape, I'm going to measure how wide I want the seam allowance to be. Just like this, by placing the measuring tape there and adjusting the seam allowance. And I am going to sew a straight line, trying to keep that seam allowance. Obviously, you can put your own markings onto the sewing machine. I only show this to you now so you can see it, because I actually don't need it anymore. I know it immediately how to do it and how wide the seam allowance needs to be. So now we stitch 2 fabrics together and voila! We have a really nice seam here. After this, you can keep practicing making more of these lines, because an industrial sewing machine is so much more powerful and stronger than the domestic machine. So you're actually going to need to sew more of these lines with this machine than you should with the domesticated ones. But this is going to be a much stronger seam, and it's going to be actually more durable than the domestic machine seams. And now we're actually going to do something more exciting. If you are comfortable with your straight line, now we are going to make a French seam. For the French seam, we are going to face the right side of the fabric towards us. So basically, the wrong sides of the fabrics are going to be in the middle. This is really important. So wrong sides are inside, the right sides are facing outside. And we are actually going to make one really slim seam here. Try to make this seam around 5 millimeters wide, or try to follow the width of the sewing machine's feet. And just make a straight line here, close it at the bottom and at the top as well. And now we have the extra fabric on the edge, which we need to trim, because our goal is going to be to turn this fabric inside out and hide that extra fabric inside the seam. And to do that, it needs to be a really slim seam that can be hidden inside a 7 millimeter stitch, just like I do it here. So I didn't actually had to trim the edges because my seam was really small. It was actually 5 millimeters. So now I can just, turn it out and then put this extra seam on top of it, closing that ugly fabric edging inside within this seam. And now when we are opening it, you will see that we have a really nice neat seam in the inside and on the other side as well. We use this seam for more high quality garments, shirts, skirts, because it gives a neat finishing. We can replace overlocking with French seam and it will be more luxurious and pretty durable as well. After this, we are going to learn two different types of hemming. So the first one we are going to learn actually takes much more time to do it than the second type, but it's so much easier, especially if you're just starting out. First, place the fabric under the machine with the wrong side facing you and the right side facing the machine itself. Fold the edge inside around 5 millimeters, maybe even 10 millimeters if you're more comfortable with that. As if you're just starting out, it takes some practicing. And here you need to pay attention because you actually have to stitch as close to the edge as possible. Ideally, you stitch around 2 millimeters away from the edge. It's amazing if you can do that, but if not, then just do a wider stitch, just to get comfortable with it. So make a stitch as slim as you can, as close to the edge as you can, while folding the fabric. And once you folded it, remove it from the machine, and actually this is how it should look like. If your stitch is further from the edge, it's okay. This might be the first time you're doing it. Here you actually have to cut off all this excess fabric as close to the seam line as possible. Take your time, don't rush, and be careful not to cut the thread itself. So only cut the excess fabric here. Once you've done that, this is how it should look like. We need to have a really nice, really thin neat line, and this one needs to be folded inside again. So you have this line, you fold it inside and you make an extra stitch on top of the stitch what you just done previously. This one is going to be easier because you already have a line that you need to follow. So you just need to make sure that you're folding it inside and follow the stitch line and sew through that stitch line which you have already. It takes a lot of practice, so don't be discouraged if it doesn't go this smoothly for you. You're gonna get there. You just need to practice it. And this is a really nice way of actually doing the hem, because look how nice, slim, thin, neat this is. This one takes quite a long time to make it, so I'm going to show you another options for the hem, although that one might need more skills. So again, don't worry if it's not going to be so nice. You're just practicing here now. The second option is actually less time consuming. This time we are going to fold the fabric twice and just do one stitch line. So instead of doing 2 stitches and 2 foldings, we are going to do 2 foldings and 1 stitching. So try to fold it twice, fold the edges twice and place it underneath the seat and start sewing it. Go as slowly as you can because actually it takes practice to fold this fabric twice and do 1 top stitch on it. Just go slowly in your own pace. And you can actually decide which one you prefer. They both look the same, but if you have never done any of these before, then do it in this order. So master the first option and then you can move forward to this one. You can see them side by side. They are both nice. Only difference is that the double stitching one takes twice as long than the simple stitching one. As a final seam, I'm going to show you one type of top stitching. You're going to have to face the right sides of the fabrics together and we are going to sew from the wrong side of the fabric. Have a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Try to keep a straight line. By now we practiced it a lot, so it should be easy. So just make a nice line with a wide seam allowance. Check if your seam is nice. Look, it's perfect. Now we are going to work from the wrong side of the fabric. Ideally you iron open the seam allowance. Now I'm just opening it and stitching it, but feel free to use an iron and open flat this seam. What I'm going to do is to follow the middle line, the seam line, with the feet of my machine to actually make a nice straight line next to it and stitch back the seam allowance. And we are actually going to do it on both sides. I usually use this kind of seam to make my corsets and to put the bonings inside these tubes that we are just creating now. But you can also use this tube as gathering tubes by driving through a ribbon through these holes and gathering the fabric, or just simply as a decor line. There are lots of possibilities with these kind of seams, and I'm sure we are going to use it later on. This is how it should look. Both decor lines equal distance from the middle line, and if yours is similar to this one, then well done! With this we are done with the basic seams lines for today. I hope you find this video useful, and I hope you will be practicing all of these seams because we are actually going to use these ones in the future. And don't be sad if it's not gonna be the nicest one at first. You have to know that all of these takes time to get used to the machine, especially to the industrial machine, because these machines are real beasts. They are so powerful. So this is it for today's lesson. These are the basic seam types. These are the ones you should keep practicing, and you need to become confident using them. You need to become confident using your sewing machine, so keep practicing. And once you mastered all of these seam types, we can start sewing clothing. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to insert zippers, and we're gonna do this next time. Bye!